What's the funniest way a student ever got humbled by a teacher? This happened during my senior year of high school in Mr. Davis's AP history class. There was this kid named Tyler who thought he was the smartest person in the room, maybe even the whole school. He'd constantly interrupt lessons to correct tiny details, argue with the textbook, and make these dramatic sighs whenever other students asked questions he thought were obvious. Tyler came from money, always wore expensive clothes, and never let anyone forget that his dad was some big shot lawyer downtown. He'd name drop fancy restaurants, brag about family vacations to Europe, and act like he was doing everyone a favor by being in our public school instead of some private academy. The worst part was that Tyler actually was pretty smart. He'd read ahead in all his textbooks, watched documentaries for fun, and could memorize random historical facts like a computer. But instead of being helpful, he used his knowledge to make other people feel stupid. During class discussions, he'd raise his hand and say things like, "Actually, that's not entirely accurate," or, "Well, if you'd read the primary sources like I have." He'd roll his eyes when classmates struggled with concepts and mutter things under his breath about intellectual mediocrity. Mr. Davis was this quiet, patient teacher who'd been at our school for like 20 years. He never seemed bothered by Tyler's attitude, just nodded politely and continued with his lessons. Most of us thought he was just being nice, maybe even a little intimidated by Tyler's knowledge. Then came the day of our big Civil War unit test. Tyler had been especially obnoxious that week, correcting Mr. Davis multiple times about battle dates and making comments about how the test was probably going to be embarrassingly easy for someone with his level of preparation. The morning of the test, Tyler strutted into class with his smug confidence. He'd spent the whole previous week telling anyone who'd listen about his detailed study guide, his color-coded timeline, and how he'd read 3 different biographies of Abraham Lincoln just for fun. Mr. Davis handed out the test papers face down and told us we had 50 minutes. Tyler immediately flipped his over and started writing before Mr. Davis even finished the instructions. The rest of us were still reading the first question while Tyler was already halfway down the page. I was sitting 2 seats behind Tyler so I could see him just flying through the test. He was writing these long, detailed answers, filling up every bit of space provided. He finished with like 15 minutes left and just sat there looking satisfied, occasionally glancing around at the rest of us still struggling. When time was up, Tyler was the first to walk up and hand in his paper. He had this huge grin on his face and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Well, that was refreshingly straightforward. I hope the curve won't be too harsh for everyone else." Mr. Davis just smiled and said, "Thank you, Tyler. I'm sure you did your best." The next day, Mr. Davis started handing back the graded tests. He always returned them in alphabetical order, so Tyler's came near the end. As he worked his way through the stack, I noticed Tyler getting more and more excited, probably imagining the perfect score he was about to receive. When Mr. Davis finally got to Tyler's paper, he paused for a second, then walked over and placed it face down on Tyler's desk. Tyler immediately flipped it over, and his face went completely white. There was a big red F at the top with a note that said, "See me after class." Tyler just stared at the paper in shock. The rest of us were trying not to look, but it was impossible to miss his reaction. His mouth was literally hanging open. After class, Tyler stayed behind, and those of us walking slowly past the door could hear the conversation. Apparently, Tyler had answered every single question perfectly. His historical facts were accurate, his analysis was thorough, his writing was clear. There was just one problem. The test Tyler had taken was actually the answer key that Mr. Davis had accidentally mixed into the stack of blank tests. Tyler had been so eager to show off that he'd spent 50 minutes writing detailed explanations for questions that were already answered. Instead of reading the actual test questions, he'd been responding to the completed answers, creating these bizarre circular explanations that made no sense. Like one answer key said, "The Battle of Gettysburg was fought from July 1st, 3rd, 1863, and Tyler had written a full paragraph about why July 3rd, 1863 was significant to the Battle of Gettysburg. Mr. Davis had realized the mistake immediately when Tyler handed in his paper, but decided to let it play out as a lesson in humility and careful attention to detail. The best part was that Mr. Davis offered Tyler a chance to retake the actual test, but the story had already spread throughout the school. For the rest of senior year, whenever Tyler started getting too cocky, someone would just say, "July 3rd, 1863, and he'd shut right up. Tyler still graduated as valedictorian, but he never again assumed he was the smartest person in the room. Sometimes the best education happens outside the textbook.